There are a lot of people in the United States, in fact 336 million of them. As the third most heavily populated country in the world, it's easy to see why so many people think we're headed for overpopulation. But they're wrong. For example, if the United States was a football field, the entire population would fit into less than a quarter of just the end zone. So if you ask me, we're far from being overcrowded. In today's video, we're going to look at the 10 states with the least amount of people per square mile. So why are these states so vacant, and what's keeping people away? Well, there are several reasons these states don't have a higher population than they do, and it doesn't all come down to harsh terrain or freezing winters. So we'll be looking at all these reasons and more in today's video. Capiche? Number 10, Kansas. Even though it's home to the absolute geographic center of America, Kansas is just not that good at drawing attention to itself. It's hot and flat and boring. There's really not that much to do in Kansas unless you're a wheat farmer. Who wants to live in a flat plain with scorching summers and unpredictable winters? On top of the harsh climate, trouble brewed in Kansas before it became a state in 1861. In the 7 years prior, the infamous Bleeding Kansas guerrilla warfare broke out over slavery rights. The violence during its infancy and scarcity of available resources like timber and water posed some pretty hard challenges for early settlers, and many just continued west or stayed in the eastern part of the state where the land is much more habitable. The population density in Kansas is just under 36 people per square mile, according to the US Census, and they have almost 3 million people in the state, ranking them 34th in population, but 15th in the size of land.
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Number 9, Nevada. If it wasn't for the legalization of gambling and quick marriages, which led to the growth of towns like Las Vegas, this state might be even more vacant than it is today. There was also a gold rush and the discovery of silver in Comstock Lode in 1859, which created the town of Virginia City almost overnight. Most people would probably guess it's so vacant because of the vast desert. No, the real reason Nevada is so empty is because the federal government owns 85% of the land. It's the #1 state in the nation with the most land owned by the federal government, including the infamous Area 51. In fact, ingrained in the Nevada Constitution of 1864, the state explicitly remarked that it wouldn't claim any unspoken for public land, meaning the feds were left with complete ownership. With so little private land coupled with the vast desert regions, most settlers just pass through on the California Trail, and although there's been some growth in recent years, it's got a long way to go before it even feels like there's too many people here. The population of Nevada is just over 3 million people, making them 32nd out of all 50 states, and 7th in size with a population density of 28.9 people per square mile.
Where is everybody?
Number 8, Nebraska. Adjacent to Kansas and very similar in geography, Nebraska is also a wide, flat land that welcomed some early European American settlers who wanted to create farms and establish communities. But most of those Oregon Trail and California Trail migrators went right through this state and said,
No.
The Lewis and Clark expedition explored the region of what is now Nebraska between 1804 and 1806, but permanent settlement took a long time and brave souls due to the frigid winters and searing hot summers. It didn't even become a state until 1861. Like Kansas, there's not a lot of trees or hills to break up those stormy fronts that pass through, and as a result, they're right in the heart of Tornado Alley. I know many people that wouldn't dream of living near tornadoes. I mean, they are terrifying, right? Or maybe we have Twister to blame for that. I've passed through and stayed in the little town of McCook, Nebraska multiple times over the years, and it's a long, boring drive, let me tell you. At any rate, the population is not rising much in recent years and sits at a total of 1.97 million people, making it 37th in the nation but ranked 16th in size. They have only 25.6 people per square mile. Number 7, Idaho. Now, here's a state that's actually growing and might not be on this list for much longer. I've lived in Washington State for 2 decades, and even long before the pandemic, I knew several folks that up and moved to either Eastern Washington or Idaho to get away from all the liberal politics and watch their money go farther. It is, after all, part of the Pacific Northwest, but was often overlooked early on because, well, if you were this far on the Oregon Trail, you might as well keep going to the coast unless you were Irish and had a thing for potatoes. It does have quite a bit more rugged terrain, and the mountains definitely make it more difficult to settle down here, which is the primary reason why the state hasn't seen much growth. But I know from experience that locals don't mind that at all. In fact, many are pretty upset that there's been a recent influx of people moving from cities like Seattle and Olympia. They've grown almost 5% since the pandemic. The total population in Idaho is just about 2 million. Might even be 2 million by the time you watch this video, ranking them 38th in population size. But with a total land area of 83,500 square miles, they're ranked number 14th, which means there's only 22.3 people per square mile. Number 6, New Mexico. Now here's a place you'd think would have a lot more settlers. In fact, Taos, New Mexico is known for its ancient adobe buildings. We're talking 1,000 years old, still housing descendants of the original families. We even featured Taos in this video. Now the Santa Fe Trail did serve as a vital trade route in the 19th century, but the harsh desert conditions and limited water and other resources just discouraged any kind of large-scale permanent settlement. There were a lot of plenty early settlers, but it just never really took off. Too many people just got tired of the desert life, I guess, and couldn't grow crops or sustain themselves, so they moved on to greener pastures.
Look at this, greener pastures just outside this door.
So you just kind of enter this downward cycle of people leaving, and the demand for more infrastructure and growth just kind of dies out. I do know some great folks that live in this state, and it is home to some decent-sized cities like Albuquerque and Las Cruces. But even since 2020, the population has shrunk by over 3,000 people. I guess the state will just continue to be part of the Wild West. There are just over 2 million people in New Mexico, placing them 36th in the United States, and in size they're ranked 5th, giving them a population density of about 17.4 people per square mile. Number 5, South Dakota. Like Idaho, South Dakota is quickly becoming a popular place to move to, and probably will continue to drop down this list or be out of the top 10 in the next decade or so. They're obviously doing something right to attract people, but at a slow and steady pace, making the changes manageable. To give you some perspective, in the last 10 years, South Dakota grew almost twice as fast as the rest of the United States as a whole, but 5 times more since 2020. They've got a lot more to offer than just an impressive view of Mount Rushmore. The quality of life is off the charts, and people are noticing. In the last 3 years, they've been ranked as the best state for veterans to live and work, and the second best state for employment, with the second highest inbound migration in 2021. So why didn't they grow this quickly before?
It's cold out here.
That's right. It's cold. Very cold. In fact, it's a state where you better be used to the cold or get used to it quick, or you'll be packing your britches back to New Mexico as soon as the snow melts. But nowadays, many people are opting for harsher climates to live in a state that offers better financial opportunities or aligns with their political and religious beliefs. Trust me, it's getting crazy out there. With about 900,000 people, they come in 46th in the nation, but their size puts them at 17th with a population density of 11.9 people per square mile. Number 4, North Dakota. Enter South Dakota's neighbor to the north, where the winters are even colder.
Too cold. Far too cold.
But overall, it's very similar to South Dakota, except that it's not drawing the same volume of new residents like its southern sister. It does boast the largest man-made lake in the United States, though, Lake Sakakawea. I guess they didn't have anything better to do. Unless you're born and raised up here and your family struck oil, or you have a really good local job, you aren't going to be sticking around, or much less moving up here to North Dakota. The population fluctuates pretty drastically from year to year. The early settlers from the eastern United States and Europe really only settled in North Dakota for the free land and the few agricultural commodities it produces, like sunflowers, sugar beets, and potatoes. Almost 90% of the land is made up of farms and ranches, so there's no gold rush, ocean views, or SiliconValley.com booms happening up here. The only real growth I do see is in the increased demand for ethanol and biodiesel, which is what's barely keeping the state from losing their numbers. In fact, there are more people in Omaha, Nebraska than there are in the entire state of North Dakota. With a population just shy of 784,000 people, they rank 47th in the US and 19th in land size, with a population density of only 11.1 people per square mile. Number 3, Montana. When I think of Montana, I think remote, but also somewhat livable. I've heard the outdoor life is excellent. Hunting, fishing, hiking, you name it. There's an abundance of natural resources up there. So why aren't there more people in the great state of Montana? Well, it goes back to the early settlers. It was so far to the north and miles from the Oregon Trail that took most people out west during the gold rush that many never ventured to find out how good it was. Back then, you did anything you could to get ahead. The eastern United States was packed full of rich folks coming in from England and other European countries and taking up all the good land and building wealthy estates. So if you wanted to have a chance, it was out in California, Washington, or Oregon. One of my best friends lives in Montana, and I know several folks that head that way to hunt and fish and get away from the busyness of life. So in a way, it's kind of good that there's not a lot of folks living up there. Hopefully it'll stay nice and rural for many generations to come to visit and explore the great outdoors. Just maybe not in the winter because, like many of these other northern states, it gets pretty chilly with full-on blizzards like the ones you read about in Little House on the Prairie. Coming in at 1.1 million cowboy hat-toting Americans, Montana ranks 43rd for population total, but with the 4th largest area of land, the people are nicely spread out. There's only 7.7 people per square mile here. Number 2, Wyoming. I've traveled through Wyoming several times, and I don't know what it is, but I could not wait to get out of the state as fast as I could. Not because of the people or anything, they are incredibly nice and friendly, probably because they're glad to see another human being. The early settlers were drawn to some discoveries of gold and silver, and ranchers seeking to start their homestead, but the extreme weather and harsh landscape made it difficult for a lot of people to settle down here. It kind of just never picked up and became more of a state that you pass through. It is beautiful country if you'd slow down enough to take a look though. It's also home to the first national park in the world, Yellowstone, and the state draws in about 8 million visitors every year, so tourism is huge. But because of the weather, and maybe even the fact that the state is on an impressive underground supervolcano, not many people stick around and settle down in the great state of Wyoming. Only 584,057 people live in Wyoming, ranking it dead last on the list, but 10th in reference to its land size. That's about 6.2 people for every square mile. Alright, before we get into number 1, if you enjoy our videos and want to see more, click the suggested video at the end of this one as it helps us grow and provide more value to viewers like you. If you gotta get going though, no worries, just remember to come back and share this video with anyone else you think might appreciate it. Alright, number 1, Alaska. By far the largest state in the nation, and for the longest time, the last state where you could actually stake a free claim on land until 1986, when the Homestead Act was repealed. That's because nobody wants to live up there, except for a few major cities. I've been to Alaska 3 times, Anchorage, Juneau, and Fairbanks, and I absolutely loved it. The air is so crisp and cool, and every bit of landscape is just breathtaking and vast, never seems to end. Would I move here? Probably not, unless it was more in the southern part of the state. Alaska is so huge. There are entire areas that have never seen a human being, or at least not for decades. It's largely uninhabitable due to the extreme weather, impossible terrain, and weird daylight hours in the summer and winter. The fact that it's detached from the mainland and not a tropical vacation island like Hawaii also seems to discourage people from relocating here. It's also expensive. Almost everything seems to be a third more expensive than the mainland because you have to import a lot. Of the few people I know that live and work up in Alaska, they are in commercial fishing and oil industry operations. It's just not a state with a lot to do except live in the great outdoors if you're able to sustain yourself. One time on my flight back home, an Alaskan resident was telling me that Alaska is so remote and detached that she said raising kids there was basically child abuse. Now, we all know that's a little extreme, but I can kind of see where she's coming from. She misses people. For the largest state in regard to land, their population totals 733,406, making them 48th with a population density of 1.1 people for every square mile. Would you consider settling in any of these states? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, share it with one person you like, and if you have time, check out this video on the Grand Prismatic Spring. And remember to keep smiling.